In the early 1900s, one American family built a house so large it rivaled European palaces. So expensive it would cost nearly $300 million to recreate today. They believed it would last forever, but within 16 years the family was broken, the heirs were dead, and the house was already becoming a relic. Its downfall began not with fire or war, but with a ship that was supposed to be unsinkable. This is Lynnewood Hall, and this is the story of how America's last Versailles became a monument to ambition, grief, and abandonment. Lynnewood Hall was commissioned by Peter Errol Brown Widener, a titan of America's Gilded Age. This was a period when industrial fortunes were built rapidly and ruthlessly. Railroads, steel, shipping, finance. Widener made his wealth through transportation and investments, eventually becoming a major shareholder in the International Mercantile Marine Company. That detail matters. IMM was the parent company of the White Star Line, the same company that owned the RMS Titanic. Widener didn't just want a large house, he wanted permanence, legacy, a monument to the idea that American wealth could rival European aristocracy. The result was Lynnewood Hall, a Beaux-Arts colossus inspired by Versailles itself. Not a family home in the traditional sense, but a statement, one that assumed the future would always be as prosperous as the present. History, of course, had other plans. In 1912, the Widener family traveled to Europe for a holiday. When it came time to return home, George Widener, Peter's son, booked passage for himself, his wife Eleanor, and their son Harry aboard a brand new ship, the Titanic. George Widener wasn't just a passenger. He was deeply connected to the ship's ownership through his stake in IMM. According to accounts, George even hosted a lavish dinner party aboard the Titanic during its maiden voyage, a celebration of modern engineering, luxury, and progress. Among the guests was Captain Edward J. Smith, the ship's now famous commander. Smith's death, like much surrounding the Titanic, was never officially confirmed, fueling decades of speculation. But what is certain is that when the ship struck the iceberg, the Widener family's world shattered. George Widener and his son Harry did not survive. They died in the icy waters of the North Atlantic, victims of the very industrial confidence that had built both the Titanic and Lynnewood Hall. And suddenly, the grand estate outside Philadelphia was no longer a symbol of triumph, but of loss. The Titanic disaster broke more than hearts. It broke futures. After the deaths of George and Harry, Peter A.B. Widener's health rapidly declined. The man who built one of the largest homes in the country never recovered emotionally. He died just 3 years later, in 1915. Control of Lynnewood Hall passed to his surviving son, Joseph Widener. Unlike his father, Joseph was not obsessed with grandeur. He was practical, disciplined, and perhaps painfully aware that Lynnewood Hall represented a world that was already fading. Despite its enormous upkeep costs, Joseph managed the estate carefully. Through shrewd financial decisions, he kept Lynnewood Hall intact during one of the most economically brutal periods in American history, the Great Depression. While countless estates were sold off, demolished, or abandoned, Lynnewood Hall survived. But survival is not the same as purpose. In 1940, Joseph's son, Peter A.B. Widener II, wrote a line that would later feel prophetic. The days of America's privately owned treasure houses are over. They are gone with the wind. Lynnewood Hall can, I suppose, be called the last of the American Versailles. This wasn't nostalgia, it was realism. The economic and social conditions that allowed families like the Wideners to exist, unchecked wealth, minimal taxation, vast domestic staffs, were disappearing. When Joseph Widener died in 1943, neither of his children wanted the burden of Lynnewood Hall. Not the prestige, the burden. A house designed for another century had no place in the modern world. By the late 1940s, Lynnewood Hall stood empty. In 1948, the entire estate, this American Versailles, was sold to a developer for just $130,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $1.7 million today. Compare that to its original construction cost of nearly $300 million in modern money. This wasn't a bargain, it was a collapse. Over the following decades, Lynnewood Hall slipped into disrepair. Roofs leaked, windows shattered. Nature began reclaiming the carefully controlled symmetry of the grounds. The mansion became a ghost of ambition, too large to restore easily, too historic to demolish, and too expensive to ignore. For many, it seemed inevitable that Lynnewood Hall would eventually be lost forever. Then, in June 2023, something changed. Lynnewood Hall was purchased by the Lynnewood Hall Preservation Foundation, an organization formed in 2022 with a singular mission to acquire the estate and restore it to its former glory. This isn't a quick fix. Restoration will take years, possibly decades, and untold millions of dollars. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Restoring Lynnewood Hall isn't just about saving a building. It's about deciding whether monuments to extreme wealth deserve preservation or reinterpretation. Lynnewood Hall is no longer just a mansion. It's a time capsule of American ambition, tragedy, and excess. A house built to last forever, nearly lost to time. And now, standing at the edge of renewal, it asks us a final question. What should survive from the age of giants? If you liked this video, please subscribe. It helps us create more videos like this.